Hey YouTube, I'm back. It's Curtis, C3 Garage Media. Welcome back to the show, guys. Well, today we have project IS300 Turbo up and nice and high on all four corners. If you tune into my last video up at Vandermeer Speedway, you would see that that clutch is done. It can't handle the power we got going on right now. And really just with drifting, street racing, track racing, everything I'm going to do with this car, I need to have a quality clutch. It's a dual compound clutch, and that should be here tomorrow. So in preparation today, we've got the IS up, nice and high, supported on 4 jack stands plus a jack, and I have 2 more jacks if I need it. And I'm going to bring you guys along with this clutch replacement. Not what I really want to be doing, but it will be a good learning experience, as I've never done an IS300 clutch. So, all right, without further ado, let's get some wrenches out. Okay, so the first place I'm going to start is on the interior. Just go ahead and unscrew the shift knob, comes right off. Then get your screwdriver underneath here. They'll be, just pull up on that face plate and it comes right up. Next thing we're going to do is take out the shifter assembly with all 4. Make sure we're in neutral. So we have 4 10mm sockets that we're going to take out. Take these out and we'll be able to get the shifter assembly. Hey guys, I want to show you how I got the interior ready to get the shifter out. It's not super straightforward for everyone. I guess first on the side of the armrest, there's going to be 2 circular caps. You remove each of those caps, then there's going to be a 14mm bolt. You take that 14mm bolt out. You then lift up the felt of your little tray right about here, and there's going to be 2 screws you need to take out. Once those screws are out, you slide your seats all the way back, and right here and on the other side will be 2 more screws you need to remove. Then you need to remove the 4 bolts holding the boot down, and that will pull this plate away. You'll need to remove a few electrical clips that are on there. Then pull your boot up to expose your shifter mechanism. You're going to have 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts. Keep note of where you are, and then just pull straight out. Okay, we're back under the tranny here. I want to show you a couple things I disconnected. I did disconnect this power line right here on the side of the transmission. Also, moving up front of the transmission, I did unbolt the ground on the front here. I'm going to be removing this completely. Just have it there so I know where it goes. I did remove the slave cylinder, which I'm about to wire up and out of the way so it's not just hanging off that clutch line. And now we're going to go ahead and drain the tranny so that once we get off balance, this thing doesn't gush everywhere, and we can start unbolting the bell housing, which will be fun. The diff oil looks pretty good, actually. Really light in color. Or the tranny oil, I mean, sorry. Okay, so I just wanted to real quick show you what I've got going on here to get the upper starter bolt out. So if you look, I got the lower starter bolt out right up top there. It's kind of hard to see. You can see my, so I have basically a 14mm on a universal on an extension connected to another extension, and that allowed me to break that bolt free and now get the starter out. So the next step here is for you guys to remove the transmission mount. So this is going to be up something like this underneath the car, obviously bolted up. Just undo the 4 bolts, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Undo those 4 bolts. That'll allow the whole transmission to come down a little bit and allow a lot more access, so that basically the tail shaft of the transmission will drop down, and then we can go ahead and loosen the 4 subframe bolts and go ahead and start working around the transmission. Alright guys, so what I did is took out the transmission bolt. I loosened the 4 subframe bolts, these guys right here, just enough to let the whole motor drop down. What that did is give me enough room, it's kind of hard to see, to get up to bolt for the tranny way back there. Way back there. There you go. You can see it right there. And so, in order to get that bolt loose, what I did is I've got a monster extension here, 36 inches. So I got my impact on a Wildly, 12 inch, 12 inch, 12 inch extension. And that let me get it first try. It took about 5 minutes. Alright YouTube, so after about 20 minutes I was able to muscle fuck this transmission out of there. I actually ended up having to, well, I'll show you real quick. I needed to lower the subframe a little bit more to get the back of the engine lower. So I did take out these 4 bolts that were kind of holding the whole subframe in place. Then I lowered the subframe to its lowest point. I do have a jack supporting it. You'd never want to let the subframe loose without something underneath it, or else it's just basically your suspension holding the whole motor in, which isn't good for those brand new coilovers. So now, underneath the car here, I'm going to go ahead and remove the pressure plate, and we'll see what that flywheel looks like behind there. Okay guys, I got the clutch out as you saw in my last clip. We've got the got the transmission out, got the clutch out now. You can see I definitely had some score marks where this side had almost completely worn itself flat. So obviously time for repair. The other side, which makes contact with the flywheel, not so bad actually. So I'm hoping that I can reuse this, or reuse the flywheel as it is, because it's a dual mass flywheel, and my dumbass didn't buy a new flywheel. All right, we're now getting these flywheel bolts off, and many times you got to hold that crank bolt in order to get them off. But a good impact wrench sure makes life easier. Rear main seal looks actually really good. I'm gonna have to pull out this pilot bearing. So I'm gonna go get a bearing puller for that. I know there are a few hydraulic tricks to get it out, but I gotta pick mine up from the store anyway, so hopefully just pull it out with the bearing puller. Yes, so I thought I'd take a second and just show you how bad the stock clutch was. You can see it's almost worn completely flat. Definitely ready for a replacement. You can't even feel a ridge in between those. Then the flywheel's pretty scorched, I'm assuming, from those runs at Bandamere. And one thing I noticed, actually good for all of you guys to note, is on the IS300 and I believe the non-turbo 2J and the Supra, they actually have a dual mass flywheel. What that basically means is your flywheel, or your clutch disc, is solid, just like a solid wheel in there, no give to it. And your spring comes from the flywheel's actually sprung. Well, I've done a lot of clutches, but I didn't know that this particular one was sprung. I should have done a little more research. So I did purchase the Clutch Masters dual friction components here, which is a sprung hub. So I've had to overnight a flywheel in. It's coming from Fidanza. It should be here tomorrow. So we'll get this thing put together, and for now, what I'm gonna do is pull the bearing. So here we have a pilot bearing puller. So we're gonna get this in the pilot bearing, and we will use this along with this slide hammer to pull it out. Okay, sorry I didn't film it, guys. It was a little tough to use both hands and also the slide hammer, but that slide hammer pulled the pilot bearing right out. Took about 10 seconds, and we're done. I'm not going to replace the rear main seal because this one actually looks like it's in pretty good shape. So I'm going to get that new pilot bearing in and get the flywheel on, and we'll get rocking and rolling on finishing this bad boy. Alright, so here's the new pilot bearing. You'll just press that in. I'm going to use this impact socket. The back of it's nice and flat, so it's not going to damage that bearing surface at all. So we'll just go ahead and just tap that in just like that, and we'll seat that all the way down and continue on. So the new throwout bearing, I just got it installed here. You can see it's nice and smooth. I recommend cleaning this surface, cleaning the bell housing in general like I did, just to get rid of all that asbestos dust from the clutch material. I went ahead and greased the splines, the tip that goes into the pilot bearing, and then the input shaft as well. So everything's lightly greased, and when I say lightly greased, I mean just take a small bit of grease and just very lightly just get a little bit on there. You don't want that to spatter on the hub. Excellent. And now we'll show you how the release works. Pretty easy to do. Basically, you have this retainer clip that clips along the back of the fork and onto the bearing itself. Okay, guys, you can see here's my new clutch and flywheel before installation. As you saw in the last clip, we got the pilot bearing in. I have the new throwout bearing installed. I got the bell housing cleaned up too. So now we are going to get the flywheel installed, get it torqued to proper specs, which is 35 foot-pounds plus 90 degrees in a star pattern, and let's get rocking and rolling. Okay, the flywheel's in. It took quite a bit of persuasion, actually. The aluminum, I read in the instructions, is actually milled a little smaller to fit on the steel shaft because the aluminum actually expands when it's hot. So it gives you two recommendations because it would not fit on at all. Either scrape out the inside or put it on a hot plate, heat it to expand the metal, and then press it on. I did a little of all those. What I did is I took some sandpaper and I just spun the flywheel on it so it stayed nice and you know, balanced, and it was getting the whole thing, and I kind of hollowed it out with some sandpaper. I then applied just a thin layer of grease to the shaft, and I took my little mini torch right here, dab it up, and I heated around the entire flywheel for about 5 minutes, got it really hot, and I was able to put it on. The last little bit, I did have to actually just kind of use the bolts to snug it on there, but it appears like everything's good, so we're gonna rock and roll. Onto the clutch. Oh, one thing, when you're torquing this, make sure you go in a star pattern. Alright guys, you can see we got the transmission back in. I gotta just tighten down the slave cylinder here and then go ahead and start putting the drive shaft and exhaust back in. Transmission's not easy to get back in. I highly recommend renting a transmission jack. I actually had to borrow one from a friend as I just could not get it in without it. Once we had the transmission jack though, everything went really smooth. Was able to mate it up pretty quickly. So gonna go ahead and finish up and we'll go from there. Alright, we got everything buttoned back up underneath here. Got the exhaust system on, got the drive shaft on. Again, try to align it as you had it originally. Make sure you torque those bolts down. Everything should be good to go. As you can see, filling this transmission takes forever. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Alright guys, we got the new clutch in finally. Got the clutch pedal adjusted properly. And taking it for a test drive. Everything's working great. We're heading off to IMI in Erie. See if we can catch a little of the Drift Colorado event. Tires loaded up. I'm loaded up. Let's go see if we can't make something happen. See ya.